FAIRtax is coming, don't stand in the way. FAIRtax is coming across the USA. FAIRtax is coming, clean up this mess. We got to get rid of the IRS. Hey, hey! Hey, hey!
Hello and welcome once again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
And we are the FAIRtax Guys. Inviting you to get a hold of us at thefAIRtaxGuys@gmail.com is our email address. And the FAIRtax Guys, we have a page on Facebook. Check that out as well. Check out our next Facebook Live as soon as we figure out when it's going to be.
Yeah, we got to get on that, don't we?
We'll tell you all about it. And we have a special guest sitting in our proverbial FTPR hot seat today.
Yeah, the hot seat.
A familiar voice. You've heard him here before on FAIRtax Power Radio, and he had the guts to come back. Randy Fischer, thank you for showing up.
Oh, I'm always happy to be here, Bob. Always happy to be with the FAIRtax Guys.
I can't believe it's been almost 4 months.
Oh, yeah, that long?
Yeah.
All right. Well, of course, Randy is a member of the AFFT, the National Organizations Board. I mean, he wears so many hats, he has to carry them around in a wheelbarrow. You know, I can't really figure out what they all are.
I have introduced Randy before as, we talk about, we have a lot of great volunteers in the area. Mm-hmm. Randy's 4 of them. He's a local volunteer. He's on the board of directors for the Florida Fair Tax. He's on the board of directors for the Americans for Fair Taxation. And he's the chair of the Marketing Communications Committee, which is the most active committee. So, yeah, he wears a lot of hats.
And he's got a pretty good ear to the ground as far as what's going on. So we're going to pick his brain here for the next half hour.
Yeah.
He's got a whole pile of stuff in his hand. Let's see, what's on your top sheet there, bud?
The top sheet is a morning update about Congress and what's going on with Congress. And, of course, that was before this morning's tragedy.
Yeah, we are recording this on the day that they had the shooting there at the ballpark. So we'll have to see. That's going to raise a lot of dust. We'll see what happens when that settles. Mm-hmm. That's obviously going to have an effect on the workings of the Congress.
Yeah.
So proceed.
Well, we have 3 tax reform bills as opposed to tax amendment bills. And the 3 tax reform bills that actually exist right now in the Congress are the FAIRtax, H.R. 25 in the House, S. 18 in the Senate. We have the Democrat Senator Ben Cardin from Maryland has filed his bill from years past, which is called the Progressive Consumption Tax Act. And I do not have the current number for it. It was filed in the 114th Congress as the Senate Bill 3529. It is billed as a progressive consumption tax, including taxes on purchases of goods and services, including a value-added tax, and including a high income, as they define that, $250,000 and up income tax.
So that's kind of like the kitchen sink. He's got everything in there.
He has pretty much loaded it up because he thinks that all 3 of those elements need to continue to work hand in hand and side by side, as he describes it. It does continue the necessity for an IRS. It does require, it has a whole bucket full of credits, tax credits, and extended earned income tax credits, child tax credits. It has some exceptions on the consumption tax portion, and it is not a simple bill.
Yeah, sounds really complicated, and I'm wondering how long it's going to take that floor to drop from 250,000 back down to a much lower number and include a lot of other people.
Yeah.
I would say one legislative session, it'll go from 250 to 150. The next legislative session, it'll go from 150 to 100. And we'll be right back where we were with 2 new taxes.
And that's one of the problems here, folks. The current income tax system as it currently exists is not stable. It is the most unstable way you can think of to fund the federal government. If you're a businessman trying to figure out what the income tax is going to do to your business, you can't, because you don't know what it's going to look like 6 months down the road.
And I'm sure Senator Cardin is very proud of this legislation, but for people like us that really study the tax code, it sends a chill down our spine to have a bill that contains an income tax, a consumption tax, and a VAT tax. It's the worst possible combination you can have because Congress can't control themselves.
You're right.
And the third bill that I mentioned is a flat income tax bill from a senator in Alabama whose name just quickly shot out of my head. But it's a 19% flat income tax, plus it maintains the 15.3 FICA payroll tax.
Ooh.
So people would be paying effectively a 34.3% tax rate.
Now that sounds horribly regressive if you're going to apply the same tax rate to everybody.
And that's my understanding, is that it applies to everybody from $1. And the chances of that passing, I think, are next to somewhere below -1 million.
There's the good news.
It has no co-sponsors.
That's what I was going to ask. Any co-sponsors?
There are 0 co-sponsors. I did not have time to check to see how many co-sponsors Senator Cardin's bill has. And that means that the 2 main plans that have been under discussion in the form of a booklet called The Better Way Tax Plan, which is about a 20-page booklet, and the I call it the Mnuchin-Cohen tax plan for Treasury Secretary Mnuchin and Economic Council Advisory Heads Cohen. Those plans are really nothing more than blueprints and bullet points.
Yeah, those are not legislative proposals that are filed in Congress with a bill number attached to them. And that's what you hear, the Paul Ryan plan and what's being called the Trump plan. Those are really just designed right ideas at the moment.
Yeah. The scuttlebutt is that Paul Ryan will not let go of his border adjustment tax. There are 0 members of the Senate who are willing to support a border adjustment tax. The Heritage Foundation came out with a paper today which urges Congress, because of the need for tax cuts to get the economy going, to do a 2-step process where they prioritize allowing businesses full expensing on investments over cutting the corporate tax rate, and then, depending upon the CBO score, moving to some minor tax cuts. So I think in the next 20 days, you're going to hear less and less about tax reform and more about tax cuts.
Yeah, and your comments about the border adjustability, I got an article here I got out of the off the AMAC website, and it's the House Freedom Caucus, and they're talking about tax reform. And most of this issue, they are bashing the border adjustability tax. They want no part of it.
Now, isn't that something that's not going to fly with the World Trade Organization as well? There are all kinds of problems with that.
Yeah.
Yes, because it's trying to adjust out individual taxes, embedded taxes, particularly payroll taxes and income taxes. It does not meet the standards required by the World Trade Organization. So another group called the Tax Foundation Group, they want nothing but doing the expensing side as a corporate rate adjustment, not an actual permanent cut in corporate rates. And they're putting pressure on Congress. And I think that this Congress is essentially dysfunctional as far as being able to accomplish major tax reform. It's just not likely to happen. So our committee group for AFFT, the Marketing and Communications Committee, is really looking at more of a 2019-2020 strategy to when the tax reform fails in 2017, and they spend all their time worrying about getting reelected in 2018, that the planned standing for 2019 for the next presidential campaign should be the fair tax. So we're opening up a line of communication with Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the daughter of Mike Huckabee, Governor Mike Huckabee.
Yeah, Deputy Press Secretary, if I'm not mistaken.
She is very knowledgeable of the fair tax. And she right now may be our best hope at a meeting with the Vice President, and that may be our best hope at a meeting with the President.
Now, the Vice President, Mike Pence, when he was in Congress, was a co-sponsor, so he knows about it pretty well. Mike Huckabee himself knows about it pretty well.
Oh, yeah.
So I would think that the upper echelon of the administration is well-versed in it. I still wonder why we're not getting any buzz in the media. Nobody's talking about it.
Well, the media doesn't...
of course, I figure the media doesn't like it, but...
Yes, they don't like it because the Democrat Party hasn't told them to support it.
Okay.
And actually, I think it might work the other way around. But the fact is, all of the major media, Fox Business News, CNBC, they are pretty well locked out as to the fair tax. They will not accept or promote a fair tax proponent. And they're locked in on trying to get the corporate tax cut at Fox Business on that side of things. And there really is no discussion of changing the tax base.
So, it could be that these folks in the media shy away from the fair tax because they don't truly understand it, and they don't want to sound foolish in front of the television camera.
So if I'm hearing you right, we at the grassroots level need to get to work.
Yeah, I think we need to really help promote the fair tax as a state bill in Georgia and Alabama. And when we get a state bill passed, when we get a state bill signed into law and it becomes operational and it has positive effects on the state's economy while eliminating an income tax, then the media... it's going to be almost impossible for them to ignore it at that point.
What do you think is the timeline for that, Randy?
The Georgia governor's election in 2018 is going to be a linchpin. There's one candidate who's going to be running, as we understand it, who is now getting educated on the fair tax and is likely to support it. There are two Secretary of State candidates. One is a full-on fair tax supporter. There are 53 members of the House in Georgia who were willing to sign on to their state fair tax bill as co-sponsors. The problem there is in the Senate. I don't remember how many Senate members they have in Georgia, but they're having a problem finding... you have to have two sponsors in order to get the bill filed in the Senate, and that's where the problem is.
Do we know exactly what this Georgia bill is going to look like? Because a lot of states, and Ron and I have talked here on FTPR quite a good bit about how we live here in Florida, which is one of the states that does not have an income tax, that we live off a sales tax, but there's no... The primary feature of the fair tax is this prebate, where you make it progressive, you refund back to people the tax that's collected from you that you don't owe, because under the fair tax you don't owe anything until your spending rises above the poverty level. Is there anything like that in the Georgia bill, to your knowledge?
Yes, the Georgia bill has a full prebate provision in it, and it was written actually by David Burton, who was one of the authors of the original fair tax bill, working with Congressman Linder at the time. And David Burton is now at the Heritage Foundation, and David Burton has been commissioned by a sister organization to Americans for Fair Taxation to complete an evasion study with regard to the fair tax. But his group was hired to write the Georgia bill. The same group that did the research, the economic research, Beacon Hill Institute, was hired to do a scoring and economic analysis of the Georgia bill. The effective tax rate on it, I think they have about a 4.5% sales tax now. The effective tax rate without the prebate is 6.1%, but for almost every economic strata up to the very highest, the effective tax rate on it is going to be under the current tax rate, even with the prebate.
In Georgia, does this bill do away with property taxes? Do you know?
No, it does away with the Georgia income tax.
Oh, they have an income tax.
Yes, it eliminates their state income tax. And it's apparently been scored as revenue neutral. And it's only 45 pages in length, so it's concise like the national FAIRtax bill is. And they think that if the Georgia governor's race goes well and they can pick up sponsors in the Senate, they're planning a big push in the spring of 2018. They've got Congressman Linder, who may come back, or not retired, Congressman John Linder, who co-authored the FAIRtax bill. Mm-hmm. They're planning some rallies for the fall, and they think that 2018 may be the year of a state FAIRtax bill. Well,
it's beginning to sound like there's a glimmer of hope that things might start to work like the Founding Fathers envisioned, where each of the states would kind of be their own, let's let one state do one thing, one state do another, and see what works.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if this will work in Georgia, and there's no doubt in my mind that it will.
Yeah.
We know that the FAIRtax is backed by over $20 million worth of research. So it's going to work just like it's advertised. And the naysayers can say what they want about it, but if it actually gets into practice at the state level and it works, I mean, what can you say? What can stop it?
We do have evidence right now that it works because the 9 states, like including Florida and Texas and Tennessee, that have a sales tax but no income tax, their economies are expanding at twice the rate as the 9 states with the highest income tax.
Well, I think people really need to see that the prebate is going to work.
Yeah.
That it's going to untax the poor. That people who are not, up on the high levels of the economic strata, they're going to be taken care of.
Because
everybody's always saying, sales tax regressive, hurts the poor, and that's not true.
Because nobody should have to pay taxes until they provide for their family.
All right.
And these states that have income taxes are now starting to recognize what an economic disadvantage they're at. And it's really going to be important to be the first one to repeal your income tax and open your state up for new business opportunity.
Of course, we've talked at length here about the evasion issue. It's horrible at the federal level. What does it look like at the state level?
Well, at the state level, I think in terms of income tax evasion, I'm sorry, I don't have any data on that. I can tell you that the preliminary data on evasion under the FAIRtax and under a national retail sales tax is looking toward under 3%, somewhere around 2.8% evasion.
Compared to
almost 26% under the income tax system.
Hello!
And that 26% is going to climb to somewhere toward 30% if it tracks the historical average. Mm-hmm. And actually the indications are that it may exceed the historical average because our whole economy is changing. There are fewer and fewer people who are working as traditional W-2 workers.
Yeah, more people are independent. We've mentioned Uber drivers and eBay stores here a lot, but there are going to be a lot of people who are no longer getting a W-2, and they get income that is not going to be reported to the IRS. And, of course, the evasion just has to go up in that thing. It's human nature to want to keep what you earn.
And as usual in its dysfunction, the Congress is completely ignoring the issue of evasion. So I would urge everyone, if your congressperson uses social media, Twitter, Facebook, to continuously raise the question of what are you going to do about the rising tax evasion?
That's a good suggestion, Bob. We need to emphasize that on each of our episodes.
That we do. All right. So even if your congressperson is a supporter and a co-sponsor of FTPR, then they understand it, and just ask them, why you need to push this. You need to push the evasion issue with your colleagues up there and get them to see, because I don't know anybody, any politician of any stripe that doesn't like to spend money. And if you tell them the current system is leaving money on the table and lots of it, you might get their attention.
And as a resource, we're urging everybody to go to fairtax.org and scroll to the bottom of the page. There are 2 buttons there. The button on the right is a button to open a downloadable PDF 6-page summary of the tax evasion, estimating future tax evasion study. And it's got some nice simple graphs and charts in it. And the same document is available at bigsolution.org. Again, scroll to the bottom of the page and click on the button that says Tax Evasion Study.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that sounds like something you ought to do, because you need to be educated on what the current system is costing you a lot.
Yeah, and you need to tell other people about this. I mean, we're doing everything we can to get the word out, but you need to help us. Tell other people about this. Tell other people about FAIRtax Power Radio. It's a free downloadable podcast. You can get on your computer or your iPhone or your Android. It's all free, and we have a free app too. So this is important. I made the point in the last episode. Is Congress going to do something about the tax code before it becomes a crisis? Are they going to be proactive, or are they going to let this crisis develop and then do something?
You want my guess?
Yeah.
I think they're going to let it become a crisis, because that's just the way it always works. It is so polarized. Doesn't matter what somebody wants to do. There's somebody else on the other side of the aisle that doesn't want to do it. And they're locking heads all the time, and nothing's getting done. So, that's the way it goes. Go, Randy. You're looking at me funny. What you got?
Well, no, I was going to update folks on one other interesting opportunity that FAIRtax has, and that's one of the board of directors for Americans for Fair Taxation, formerly a hedge fund manager in New York City, and over the course of his career, he came to know several very highly placed individuals that are currently in the administration, and a former mayor of the city, all of whom are fairly close to the very top of the administration. And we're looking at hopefully a meeting being arranged through one of those individuals with the vice president and possibly even the president. So that's one more opportunity we hope it is going to get fulfilled. I would give you more detail, but we're just not allowed to go into it until
it's finalized.
Yes.
But it's looking like, if I'm hearing you right, that this Congress is just going to be deadlocked, not going to get much of anything done. Nothing happens, and then next year is when the fair tax really rises to the top of the discussion. Have I heard that right?
Well, I think it may be closer to 2019 rather than 2018 that it's going to rise to the top of the discussion.
But eventually, we may be the last man standing in this argument.
Exactly. And we may be the only man standing that's truly revenue neutral, because both the Trump plan and to a lesser extent the Ryan plan, if you include the border adjustment tax, score out as being highly deficit
will add to the deficit tremendously.
Correct. So,
and the fair tax was designed to be revenue neutral.
Right.
Any talk about adjusting the 23% rate? I haven't heard anything. I assume that's pretty well solid and will remain so.
My understanding is that the economic studies done by Beacon Hill Institute still are supposed to be applicable to saying that the fair tax remains revenue neutral at 23% inclusive.
That means for every $100 you spend, 23 of it is tax. That's inclusive. Folks will try to flip that around and say it's a 30% tax because you're adding 23 tax dollars to a $77 price. But it works out, just depends on which way you look at it. It's still the same amount of money.
Yeah. Yes. 23% inclusive is the same as 30% exclusive.
Yep. Okay. But it's still better than what we got.
Oh, far better.
All right. We got about 5 minutes left here, guys. What else is on the agenda we need to get to real quick?
Well, just real quick, our other major project is to recruit small business and small business associations to getting fully engaged with supporting the FAIRtax. And we're creating a new whiteboard animation script, and it's in the development stage. But essentially, it's small business on the infernal tax highway. Mm-hmm. And as they progress the infernal tax highway, they hit toll after toll after toll. Uh-huh. The first one being record keeping, and there's multiple piles of records that they have to load up in their truck. The second one, complexity. The third one, corporate income tax. The fourth one, personal income tax. And they're just hitting toll after toll until they get to the final booth, which says estate tax, out to lunch, see us at the end of the road.
Oh, mercy. All right.
That scene dissolves, and you see them on the FAIRtax Highway to Success, and the first thing you see is speed limit, no limit.
Okay. I'm a small businessman that's convinced I want to support the FAIRtax. How do I go about doing that?
You do the same things that individuals do, but you recruit other small businesses, and you join a small business association that, like the National Small Business Association, which has 6,500 members and fully supports the FAIRtax.
All right. Well, I thank you for coming by and talking to us today. We'll grab you again in the future for sure.
I'll keep checking in.
All righty. We got a couple of minutes here left, Ron. We've got to do our legislative update.
Oh, yeah.
On how many, we're looking at Congress.gov, scanning on the phrase Internal Revenue Code, trying to find all of the bills that have been introduced that are proposed changes to the tax code. It was a little over 600 and some. I think it was about 620, close to 630 last time we looked. It is now up to 669 as we record this show today.
669 proposals to change the tax code just since the beginning of January, the beginning of the 115th Congress. Now, of course, not all of those are going to become law, but unfortunately, some of them will, just adding language, because they don't take anything out of the tax code. They just keep piling on more on top of it. We're responsible for every word of it once it passes.
That is just a really good insight into the thinking of the Congress critters.
Yeah.
How they just going to monkey with it all the time. And if you get this flat tax and flatten it out, it's not going to stay flat. They're going to keep monkeying with it. You need to jerk the whole thing out by the roots and replace it with a fair tax.
Yep. And again, folks, we need your help. We need your help to get people on board with this. So tell them to go to fairtax.org and check it out. There's lots of information there. If the spirit moves them, send them a nice donation. Go to in fairtax.org, you can find out what your state organization is and contact them too. Maybe you can help them out. Maybe you can join them as a volunteer. All right, but tell people about FAIRtax Power Radio too. It's a very good way of getting the information out.
And we always hit on PopVox.
PopVox is a great website, POPVOX, Popular Voice, and it lists. First, you have to register. Give them your name and address, because then they know what congressional district you're in, who your congressman is, and who your two senators are. And then you can weigh in on any legislation there. Now, remember, H.R. 25 is the bill in the House. S-18 is the bill in the Senate. So please go there and, write your comments of support.
And the webinar.
The webinar, fourth Thursday of the month. You have to register for it. See, we give you lots of ways to learn about the FAIRtax. The webinar is another free thing. You go to fairtax.org/webinar, and you can register there. And then just before 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time on the fourth Thursday, they'll send you a reminder of exactly when it is. You click the little link, and it's interactive. You can type in questions.
Mm-hmm. And something else we don't always suggest, just go to the bookstore or go online and buy the FAIRtax book. There's 2 of them.
Yeah. It's strangely enough, the title is called The FAIRtax Book.
Yep.
By Bortz and Linder. There's 2 editions.
I gave a copy to my pastor's wife this past week.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. We know of a lady who gave it to her son when he got married. Said, you need to learn this.
All right. Well, we've got to wrap up this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. Thanks again so much for listening. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Bolero.
The FAIRtax Guys reminding you that the FAIRtax is America's big solution. And Randy, you can join us here. Once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
Amen.
FAIRtax is coming. Don't